Hello everyone. Today we will discuss the second topic of cell injury, that is reversible cell injury. We discussed how the cell will adapt when the environment is not favorable to the cell itself. So it will try to adapt that abnormal environment or the stressful environment. But when the stress is so much that it can't adapt the adaptation, it will go or it will lead to injury to particular cell. So in this figure you can show that normal cell is there. It try to adapt, but when the stress is so severe that it can't adapt further, it will undergo injury. And the outcome of this injury will depend on the type of the injury, duration of the injury, severity of the injury. For example, if the toxin is of short duration, it may lead to a little bit or the short reversible injury. But in the same time, if that toxic substance is given for a longer duration, it will give a lethal injury. Same way, like injury, the type of injury also depend on the cell of the type of the cell. Which type of cell? For example, if we take example of striated muscle of cell, hypoxia will lead to less injury to the striated muscle of cell compared to that cell present in the case of heart. So hypoxia injury is more severe in heart cell compared to the striated muscles of leg. Now what are the causes of reversible injury? Very important is the hypoxia, ischemia. Hypoxia is the decreased amount of oxygen in the blood, and ischemia is the decreased amount of blood to that particular portion. There are certain physical agents which can lead to injury, for example, trauma, burns, etc. Chemical agents and drugs, infectious agents, immunological reactions, nutritional imbalance, aging, psychogenic diseases. It can be iatrogenic or it can be idiopathic. But the most important cause of reversible cell injury is the hypoxia. Now, what are the principles of cell injury? How it leads to the affect the cell? I told you that it's depend on the type of injury, duration of injury, and severity of injury, and also the cell type on which the injury will occur, and the status of adaptability of that particular cell, that up to which level the cell can adapt to that particular stress or the injury. Now, once the injury occurs, there are certain targets in the cell which can be affected by the injury. Most important is the cell membrane. Second is the mitochondria. Third is the cytoskeleton. And fourth is the cellular DNA. In the cell membrane, it affects the integrity of the cell membrane. In the mitochondria, it affects the aerobic respiration. In the cytoskeleton, it affects the protein synthesis. In the DNA, it can do the genetic alteration, and all will this leads to structural and biochemical changes in the cell environment, and that will lead to the final morphological consequences in the cell. Now we go to the pathogenesis of injury. I told you what is hypoxia, that is decreased oxygen content of blood, and ischemia is the inadequate or the decreased blood flow. It is important to know that ischemia is worse than the hypoxia. If the hypoxia or ischemia is of short duration, the effects are reversible on rapid restoration of the circulation. That is very, very important. And the changes which occur in this case when it is of short duration are as follows. It is also known as reversible injury. Now, first of all, the effect is on the mitochondria, that it affects the aerobic respiration. Then it affects the membrane. Then it affects the protein synthesis, cytoskeleton, and genetic apparatus. Now, what happened to the mitochondria? We will just see the figure. Ischemia will affect the mitochondria first in the cell, it leads to decreased oxidative phosphorylation, and this will ultimately produce less ATP, or the decreased energy production is there. And because of that, the first effect is increase anaerobic glycolysis. Because of the increase in our aerobic glycolysis, there is a decrease in the glycogen, and because of that, there is a decrease in the pH. And this leads to clumping of nuclear chromatin. So this is the first effect. Reduce ATP, increase anaerobic glycolysis, decrease glycogen, decrease pH, and clumping of nuclear chromatin. The second effect is decreased in the ATP leads to decreased sodium pump. And because of that, there is an increased influx of calcium ion, water, and sodium. And also there is an increased efflux of potassium. All these things leads to endoplasmic reticulum swelling, that is cellular swelling, and loss of microvilli and black formation on the cell. So again, reduce ATP, reduce sodium pump. Because of that, increase influx of calcium and water and sodium, which is responsible for cellular swelling. Increase influx of potassium ultimately leads to endoplasmic reticular swelling, cellular swelling, loss of microvilli, and black formation. And third effect of this decreased ATP is detachment of ribosomes from its attachment, and that will lead to decreased protein synthesis, and because of that, there is a lipid deposition is there. So these are the effect of decreased oxidative phosphorylation in the mitochondria. I will try to explain these things in this diagram again. Cessation of blood flow will lead to lack of oxygen or lack of the glucose. So there is a fall in the mitochondrial ATP production. This depletion of the cellular ATP will lead to failure of the membrane calcium pump. That leads to free calcium which enters into cytoplasm. There is activation of phospholipases. That will lead to membrane damage, and there is a massive entry of calcium and water into cell, and that will forms the swelling of the cell, and there is a liberation of the lysosomal enzyme. Second effect is because of the decreased ATP, there is a failure of membrane sodium potassium ATP is formed. Sodium and water enter into the cell, and again it is responsible for swelling of the endoplasmic reticulum. And third effect leads to the anaerobic metabolism, and it will lead to fall in the intracellular pH. There is activation at low pH, and that will lead to the necrosis. So these are the effects because of the mitochondrial ATP decreased production. Because of all this, what is the morphological effect of the cell? So ultrastructurally, if we see the ultrastructural damage, first in the mitochondria, you can see a low amplitude swelling and phospholipid is amorphous densities. In the endoplasmic reticulum, you see distension of the cistern and detachment of the ribosomes. Plasma membrane, you see loss of microvilli, black formation, focal projection of the cytoplasm. You can see myelin figures which is derived from membrane and enclosing the water and dissociated glycoprotein. In the nucleolus, you see the segregation of granules and fibrillary component of the nucleolus and reduced synthesis of RNA. So all these are ultrastructural effect on the cell morphology. Now we see the gross and microscopic changes in the cell. All these are reversible changes that occur in the cell. On the restoration of the normal environment, the cell will gain its mother nature. In the older time, the term degeneration was used for this reversible injury, but currently we use the retrogressive change or the RI for these changes. Cellular swelling is the commonest change, microscopically visible. You can see grossly the affected organs are kidney, liver or heart or muscle. They are enlarged, and on cut surface you found surface outwards is bulging, and there is a slight opacity of the opacity you can see. Microscopically, the cells are swollen and the microvascular is compressed, and you can see small clear vacuoles in the cytoplasm. So cellular swelling and fatty change. These are the two important microscopic changes of reversible cell injury. You can see the large vacuoles, compressed microvasculature. So this is the features microscopically in the case of reversible injury. Same, you can see this. So here you can just diagrammatically see the normal cell when injury occurs. There is a, in this portion you can see the reversible changes. These are the changes which can be reversible. Cellular swelling of the endoplasmic reticulum, some mitochondria, loss of ribosomes, cell stress response. So cell recovery can occur on the restoration of normal environment up to this level. But once these are the changes starts, it goes into the irreversible phase. Very important is the loss of membrane integrity. So that is a very important point which decide whether the injury is reversible or irreversible. And these are the gross changes, important changes which occur in case of irreversible injury. So now what is the morphology of the irreversible injury? There are different type of changes you can see that, for example, hyaline change, nucleoid change. So we will discuss it one by one. First most important is the hyaline change. Hyaline means glassy or opaque. It is a descriptive histological term used for glassy, homogeneous, eosinophilic appearance of material in the hematoxylin and eosin stain section, and does not refer to the specific substance. It may be extracellular or intracellular. Now, what are the examples of intracellular hyaline change? First is the hyaline droplet in the case of kidney in case of excessive reabsorption of the plasma protein. So you can see in the changes you can see in the tubules. Hyaline regeneration of the rectus abdominis muscle in typhoid fever. Then memory hyaline bodies which we can see in the alcoholic liver disease. Then nuclear and cytoplasmic hyaline inclusions or the viral inclusion we can find in the viral infection. And lastly, the shell body you can find in the multiple myeloma. So all these are the example of intracellular hyaline change, which is the example of retrogressive injury or the reversible injury. Now, what are the example of extracellular hyaline change? Example is leiomyoma of uterus, hyaline arteriosclerosis in renal vessel in hypertension and diabetes mellitus, hyalinized glomeruli in chronic bronchiolitis, corpora amylosa in prostate in case of benign prostatic hyperplasia or in advanced stage. So these are the example of extracellular hyaline deposition. Now mucoid change. All of you know that mucus is secreted by the mucus gland and epithelial cells of the mucous membrane, and it is a combination of proteins complex with the mucopolysaccharide. So mucin is a glycoprotein and it is a constituent, and mucin is produced by the epithelial as well as the connective tissue. So the mucoid chain can be of epithelial type or of connective tissue cells. Again, mucus is a combination of protein and mucopolysaccharide. Glycoprotein is a chief constituent and it can be produced by epithelial cell or connective tissue. Now the epithelial mucin has changed, first we discussed. The characteristics, it is a Barr's positive and Alston blue positive. You can see in the capital inflammation of mucous membrane of respiratory tract and GI tract and uterus. You can also find in the obstruction of duct lead to mucosal in the oral cavity and gallbladder. You can also see in mucin secreting tumors such as ovary in the gastrointestinal tract tumor. So this type of epithelial mucin you can find in this type of tumor also, and They are the mucoid, they will lead to mucoid chain, and it is a reversible change. Now the connective tissue mucin change. The characteristics, it is negative bypass. Special stain used for this connective tissue mucin change is the colloidal iron and Archean blue. It is present in tumor like myxoma, neurofibroma. The myxomatous change in the dermis and myxoid and myxoid change in ganglion. So these are the example of connective tissue mucinous change. So there are two types of epithelial mucin change and connective tissue mucin change. Example of the reversible injury. Now, free radical injury, it is in a way it's a different topic because it is a very common agent for cellular injury, and we will talk the free radical injury in detail when we deal with the inflammation, chapter of the inflammation, but we will just see how the free radicals will injure cells in this chapter. We just discussed how it's produced. Although oxygen is lifetime of all cells in tissue, its radical form are most dangerous. So, the radical form of oxygen is dangerous. Otherwise, it is a life-saving for all the cells. Now, how it is produced, where it is, or what it leads to, radical what it leads to. So, it will lead to ischemic reperfusion injury. It will lead to ionizing radiation, chemical toxicity, hyperoxia, cell aging, killing of exogenous biological agents, and inflammatory damage. So these are the effects of free radical injury. Free radicals are also known as reactive oxygen species. The short form is ROS. All the free radicals have an unpaired electron in its outermost orbit, and because of that, they are very extremely reactive. And whenever they come into the contact with any protein or any lipid content, they will convert themselves into a free radical. So the chain will go on. That's why it is a very injurious for the particular cell. So free radicals have unpaired electron, they are extremely reactive, they are non-specific, they are self-propagating, and usually damaging to the underlying structure. What are the major reactive oxygen species? One is the superoxide, second is the H2O2 or the hydrogen peroxide, then hydroxyl radical and nitric oxide. These four are the very important free radicals which will lead to injury to the cell. How it generates? There are various reactions in the body or the cellular metabolism in which these free radicals are usually produced, and body itself have that capacity that they will dissolve with these free radicals. But when the production of the free radical exceeds the capacity of the cell to neutralize them, it will damage the cell. There is an auto-oxidation of oxygen by the enzymes such as xanthine oxidase and cytochrome P450, conversion of the oxygen to superoxide in the mitochondria. Second is superoxide to hydrogen peroxide by enzyme superoxide dismutase. And hydroxyl ion is generated by the radiolysis of water from hydrogen peroxide by catalase and glutathione peroxidase by the Pantone reaction. This is very important reaction in ion metabolism, which will you learn in case of iron deficiency anemia when you learn the iron metabolism. Now, what are the effects of these free radicals? They usually affect the membranes, they affect the proteins, and they lead to the DNA damage. On the membrane, they lead to lipid peroxidation. In the proteins, they do the cross-linking and fragmentation of the protein. And in the DNA, they cause the strand breakage, or that can be a formation of QT dimers, which will be ultimately harmful for the particular cell. Now, what is the molecular mechanism of damage? How they will lead to this damage? So, these reactive oxygen metabolites, they do the peroxidation of the lipid. Because of that, cell integrity will be disturbed. They do the oxidation of protein, so the protein synthesis is deprived. They block the DNA, they do the DNA damage because of the protein synthesis abnormality. They also damage the mitochondria because of the influx of the calcium ion. And they also do the minor and cytosolic damage by immune-mediated injury because they are the highly reactive, so they will auto-regulate their injury. So I have diagrammatically represent the different effect of free radicals. These are the reaction by which the free radicals are produced. Redox reaction, Danton oxidase, free ion, neutrophils, oxygen therapy, drug toxin elevation. All these is responsible for the production of free radicals. These are the protective mechanism from the body, which protect the body from the dangerous effect of free radicals. These are the free radicals which ultimately produced, and these are the effect of these free radicals. For example, peroxidation of liquid will cause the membrane damage. High containing protein damage will cause the ion pump damage. Because of that, there is increased influx of calcium. They do the DNA damage because of the impaired protein synthesis. They also cause the mitochondrial damage, and that will lead to chemical influx into the cell. So these are the effect of free radicals. Again, this is a diagrammatic presentation of the free radical injury. First of all, the generation of free radicals. These are the factors responsible for the generation of the free radical. These are the reaction by which it can be produced. These are the injury by the free radicals. DNA fragmentation, protein cross-linking and fragmentations, membrane and lipid peroxidations. These are the protective mechanism by which there is neutralization of free radicals, and so there is no injury. These are the element which will take part in the cessation of the free radical injury, and these are the free radical reaction in which the free radical are produced. One is the superoxide to S2O2, second is the Phantom reaction, third is the glutathione peroxidase reaction. So in this reaction, you can see that these three radicals are produced: hydroxyl ion, hydrogen peroxide, and superoxides. So all this leads to the injury to the cell if they are not neutralized by the protective mechanism. So I just discussed it out. What are the defense against a free radical? So there are antioxidants which are exogenous or endogenous, and they will inactivate the free radicals. Enzymes are the superoxide dismutase, catalase, and glutamate peroxidase. Non-enzymatics are vitamin A, C, and E. Sulfide containing compounds, cysteine and glutathione. Metal binding proteins, for example, transferrin, ceruloplasmin. All these are the antioxidant which protect the cell from the injurious effects of free radicals. Thank you.